What if the nightmare you thought you escaped as a child came back for you as an adult? Not in your dreams, not in some haunted house you can just move out of, but in your own home, the same walls where your parents raised you. Imagine waking up at 2 a.m. to write a horror story and suddenly feeling eyes burning into the back of your neck from the dark veranda. You turn around, nothing. Then the curtain on the storeroom door starts sliding open by itself. The power dies, total blackness. Something warm and fleshy brushes against your hand in the dark, like a human body just walked past your bed. And the next night, when you come home from work, raw, blood-soaked chunks of meat are scattered all over your courtyard like it rained from hell itself. This isn't fiction. This happened to me. And after 25 years of silence, the same demonic entity from my childhood has returned. My name is Rana. I live alone in the lower portion of my family house in Pakistan. But tonight, I'm telling this story for every American who's ever felt watched in an empty room. Because some things don't care about borders. Some things don't stay buried. And once they taste your fear, they never truly leave. Stick with me for the next 2 hours. By the end, you'll never look at your backyard at night the same way again. Let's begin. I live alone now. My parents passed away years ago. My siblings are all settled in their own homes with families. The lower portion of this old house is mine. Last room, veranda right in front, storeroom beside it, open courtyard, and at the far end, a small sitting area near the boundary wall. 11 days ago, around 2 a.m., I was sitting up in bed, typing the next episode of my ongoing horror series, Old Grave, New Doll. I'm a cardio instructor and kickboxing trainer by day, strong nerves, I train people to push their limits. At night, I write the kind of stories that make listeners sleep with the lights on. Irony, right? But that night, something shifted. I felt it before I saw anything. That sixth sense prickle, the one that screams, "You are not alone." Like someone was standing in the veranda, just beyond the window, staring straight at me. I laughed at myself. Come on, Rana Sain, you're writing horror and now you're scaring yourself? I kept typing. A few lines later, the feeling hit harder, intense, heavy, like eyes drilling into my soul. I stopped. I stared at the window for a long time. Nothing but darkness. Then, as soon as I looked back down at my laptop, I heard it. A soft, deliberate rustle. The curtain on the storeroom door was moving, slowly sliding aside as if invisible fingers were pulling it open. The open doorway behind it disappeared behind the fabric. My blood turned to ice. This wasn't wind. There was no breeze that night. It was winter, cold, still, dead quiet. I froze, heart hammering. Then I forced myself up. Right at that moment, every light in the house went out, complete swallowing darkness. I reached for my phone on the bedside table. My hand swept through the air and brushed against something. Warm, soft, fleshy, like a human shoulder or arm had just passed inches from me. I snatched the phone, flashlight on, barefoot, and moved toward the storeroom. I told myself I was fine. Fear had gripped me for a second. Now I was back in control. I swept the storeroom, old furniture, junk, nothing else. Stepped into the courtyard, looked at the neighbors. Their lights were still on. Only my house was pitch black. Then, clattering from the kitchen, I swung the light. Just a stray cat, probably, hungry, knocking around utensils. I convinced myself the curtain was the cat. Winter nights are cold. Maybe it pulled the fabric with its mouth looking for shelter. The power outage? Voltage fluctuation. Happens all the time here. Main switch trips. I opened the distribution box. Sure enough, the main was off. I flipped it back on. Lights returned. Relieved, I left my story unfinished, put on a movie, and eventually fell asleep. I slept through most of the next day, woke up around 3 p.m., had 2 boiled eggs and milk, and headed to the gym in defense for my shift. I love my job, helping people transform their bodies, teaching kickboxing. Shift ends at midnight, home by 12:30. But when I unlocked the main gate that night, chunks of raw, blood-stained flesh were scattered all over the courtyard. Not small pieces, big, fresh, dripping chunks. The smell hit me like a punch, and in that moment, I knew. What I'd dismissed as imagination the night before was real. My past had clawed its way back into my present. That unseen force, that terrifying entity, had never truly left. After years of quiet, now it was standing right here again. To understand why this broke me, I have to take you back 25 years. I was 6 years old. The area where we live now is crowded, thousands of houses, busy streets, a proper colony in Lahore. But back then, it was mostly empty land, an under-construction society with just a handful of scattered houses. Our street had only 4 homes. In front of us stretched a vast open field with uneven ground, ponds, and tall reeds. About 600 steps away stood a small graveyard, maybe 12 or 15 graves. Right next to it, enclosed by a wall, was a Christian graveyard. Winter nights were brutal. One night, I woke up to fear and the sound of Quranic verses being recited loudly. My mother and elder sister were trembling, repeating Ayatul Kursi over and over. Even at 6, I could see the terror on their faces. I started crying. That night, pieces of blood-soaked flesh had been thrown into the houses on our street. It wasn't the first time. Ever since people started moving into this once empty land, strange things happened after midnight. At first, it was just stones. Then the flesh started raining, and the doorsteps of houses were smeared with thick, dark blood. That night, the cats and dogs were screaming louder than usual. My father was away, traveling for work. We stayed up all night, gripped by pure dread. Early morning, after sunrise, a neighbor woman knocked. Her voice felt like salvation in the thick winter fog that still blanketed everything. When my mother opened the door, the woman stepped in, face pale and yellowish. She whispered that every doorstep in the street was smeared with blood and flesh. Raw meat chunks had fallen inside people's homes. Strangely, the stray cats and dogs wouldn't touch it. They were terrified too, cowering despite their earlier barking. The whole neighborhood was in panic. People whispered theories, jinns disturbed by new construction on old graveyard land, black magic rituals in the cemetery at night. We kids had found cloth dolls pierced with needles there while playing. My father returned by afternoon. The men gathered and went to the local cleric. He said these evil forces had lived in the empty land for years. Human settlement was provoking them. He advised visiting a nearby saint's shrine, offering prayers and charity. Every Thursday, the saint's spirit would visit homes for protection. But he warned the entities wouldn't vanish completely. Good and evil coexist. Their power might weaken, but they would still trouble people. The neighborhood cooked huge pots of rice and sweet porridge, went to the shrine together, and distributed the food. For a while, things calmed, fear eased. But 2 months later, the entity made its first direct, dangerous attack on our house. My elder sister, whose wedding was approaching, woke up screaming one night in absolute terror. Her eyes bulged, face deathly pale, body shaking violently. She had lost all control. That was only the beginning. From that night onward, the attacks on our family intensified. My sister would wake up possessed-like, speaking in a voice that wasn't hers, describing things no child should know. Stones would fly through closed windows and hit only specific people. At times, heavy breathing would come from empty corners. One night, my mother found bloody handprints on the inside of our front door, prints too large to be human and still wet. The flesh rain returned periodically, sometimes just a few pieces, sometimes more. Animals avoided our street entirely after dark. We performed ruqya, had amulets made, visited shrines. For years, it was a cycle of terror and temporary relief. The pious barriers and prayers would hold it back for a while, but never destroy it completely. Then, as I grew older, the incidents seemed to fade. Life moved on. I focused on studies, fitness, building my career. I thought it was over. But I was wrong. These horror stories I've been writing, they didn't just come from imagination. Every time I sit down to type, memories flood back, conscious and subconscious. I open doors I should have kept sealed. I engage with that world again, and it engages back. Now, 9 or 10 days later, I'm still in this house. I feel it constantly. Heavy breathing right beside me in bed when the lights are off. A shadow brushing past me in the hallway. Wide, unblinking eyes watching me from the veranda. I wash the blood and flesh away every time it appears, but it returns. This entity is bound to me, to my family, from that old deserted land. It waited 25 years, and now it's more violent, more personal. In the past week, the incidents have grown worse. Last night, I woke to the sound of something heavy dragging across the courtyard. When I shone the light, more fresh flesh, this time arranged in a pattern, almost like a symbol. The cat I saw earlier, I haven't seen it since the first night. Sometimes I hear my sister's terrified scream from 25 years ago, echoing faintly through the rooms, even though she lives miles away now. I've started sleeping with lights on, but the electricity still fails at the worst moments. I'm a strong man. I train fighters, but this is something no kickboxing can fight. The question that haunts me every night, did writing these stories summon it back? Or was it always waiting, and my words just removed the final spiritual barrier? I'm still here, still in this house filled with my parents' memories. I won't run, but I need to know, is there anyone listening who has faced something similar? Have you ever felt that sixth sense stare in an empty room? Have you ever found something unnatural in your home that science can't explain? If this story sent chills down your spine, if you felt that same uneasiness while listening late at night, then do this right now. 1. Subscribe to Eerie Narratives and turn on notifications because this entity isn't finished with me, and the next chapter might be even darker. 2. Comment below, I felt it too, if you've ever experienced something watching you. Share your own story, the scariest one, the ones that still keep you up at night. 3. Like this video if you believe some doors should never be opened again. And most importantly, if you're watching this alone, in the dark, check your curtains right now, because sometimes they move when nothing is there. Until then, sleep with the lights on. This is Eerie Narratives, and some nightmares never truly end. Thanks for listening through the terror. Stay safe out there, and remember, they're always closer than you think.
Imagine this. You're driving alone on a remote back road in the Blue Ridge foothills of North Carolina just after midnight. The kind of night where the mountains swallow the stars and the air tastes like damp earth and regret. Your headlights cut through the fog like knives, but they can't touch what's waiting ahead. Then you see them. Not headlights, not stars. Soft glowing orbs, red, then blue, then a sick yellow, dancing slowly above Brown Mountain. They hover, pulse, and move against the wind, as if they're watching you. Locals say they've been there since before the Cherokee walked these lands. Scientists have no explanation. But what if they're not lights at all? What if there's something that's been calling people into the dark for centuries? And what if tonight they called you? Welcome to Eerie Narratives. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because once these lights lock onto you, there's no turning back. Stick around till the end for a special warning that might just save your life if you ever find yourself on a North Carolina mountain road after dark. Now, lean in close. This is the story of lights that should not walk. In the summer of 2019, 4 college friends from Asheville decided to chase the legend. They called themselves the Light Hunters, amateur YouTubers obsessed with the unexplained. Jake was the skeptic, always laughing off ghost stories with a beer in hand. Sarah was the believer, the one who dragged them out there with her EMF reader and infrared camera. Mike brought the drone, and his girlfriend Lena, she just wanted one good scare for the content. They drove deep into Burt County, past Morganton, where the pavement gives way to gravel and the trees lean in like they're listening. The plan was simple: camp near Wiseman's View, film the Brown Mountain Lights, and upload a banger video. But legends in North Carolina don't play by plans. They arrived just as the sun bled out behind the ridges. The air grew thick, heavy with the scent of pine resin and something metallic underneath. As darkness settled, the first light appeared. A single pale orb, no bigger than a basketball, floated above the tree line. It moved slowly, deliberately, then split into 3. They danced in perfect silence, changing colors like living things breathing. Sarah whispered into the camera, her voice trembling with excitement. "Guys, they're here. This is real." Jake snorted, probably swamp gas or drones from some rich guy in Asheville. But as the night deepened, the lights grew bolder. They descended lower, weaving between the trees, sometimes pausing directly above the group as if studying them. Around 2 a.m., Mike launched the drone for aerial footage. It rose smoothly. Then the controller glitched. The screen filled with static, and the drone veered straight toward the mountain, vanishing into the glow. They never found it. That's when the whispering started. At first, they thought it was the wind through the leaves, but the words were clear, old, guttural sounds in a language none of them recognized. Cherokee? Something older? It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Lena was the first to suggest they leave. "This doesn't feel right," she said, her flashlight beam shaking. But Sarah pointed deeper into the woods. "Look, the lights are leading somewhere." Against every instinct, they followed. The trail narrowed, the ground grew unnaturally cold. After an hour of hiking, the trees suddenly stopped. They stepped into a perfect circular clearing about 40 feet across. Not a blade of grass, not a single weed, just bare, packed earth as if scorched by something unholy. They had stumbled upon the Devil's Trampling Ground, though none of them knew its name yet. Legends say the devil himself walks here every night, pacing in endless circles, plotting the ruin of souls. Anything placed in the center vanishes by morning. Nothing grows. Animals refuse to cross the line. Jake laughed nervously and threw his empty beer can into the middle. "Let's see if the devil's thirsty." They set up camp right on the edge, too arrogant to leave. Midnight came and went. The Brown Mountain Lights now ringed the clearing like spectators at a ritual. Then the pacing began. Not footsteps exactly, more like the earth itself breathing, a rhythmic pressure that made their hearts sink to an unnatural beat. Lita woke first. She saw a shadow in the center of the circle. Tall, horned silhouette. No, just a man, but its legs moved in a perfect, endless circle, faster and faster, wearing the dirt deeper. She screamed. The others jolted awake. The shadow was gone, but Jake's beer can vanished. In its place lay something else. Mike's missing drone, smashed and covered in a black, tar-like substance that smelled like sulfur and rotting meat. Panic set in. They tried to run, but every path led them back to the clearing. The lights blocked the way, forming a glowing wall that burned their eyes if they stared too long. Sarah's camera caught it all. Faces in the orbs, distorted, screaming faces of people long missing in these mountains. Hikers, lovers, entire search parties that vanished without a trace. The lights weren't lights. They were the souls of those who had followed the glow and never left. Trapped between the mountain and the devil's circle, feeding whatever walked there. By 4 a.m., the group was breaking. Mike started muttering to himself, walking the edge of the circle in perfect sync with the invisible pacer. His eyes glazed over. Lena begged him to stop, but when she grabbed his arm, he turned with a smile that wasn't his. "It feels good. Join the dance." Jake tried to fight it. He punched the ground, screamed at the lights, but something invisible shoved him hard into the center of the clearing. When he stood up, his footprints were already gone, swallowed by the dirt. Sarah was the last to resist. She turned on the infrared and saw the truth. Hundreds of translucent figures circling endlessly, their mouths open in silent screams, pulling the living in with tendrils of light. The brown mountain lights weren't phenomena. They were the lure. The devil's trampling ground was the trap. And North Carolina's mountains had been hungry for a very long time. At dawn, the lights finally faded. A lone hiker found the campsite 2 days later. 3 tents, perfectly arranged, 4 backpacks untouched, but only one person remained. Sarah, sitting cross-legged in the exact center of the barren circle, rocking gently. Her eyes were wide open, reflecting an inner glow that never quite left. When rescuers asked what happened to her friends, she smiled slowly and pointed upward. They're still walking, with the lights now. Sarah was institutionalized. She never spoke again, except in her sleep, where she whispered the same phrase over and over. "Come chase the lights. The circle is waiting." To this day, on warm summer nights near Brown Mountain, new lights sometimes appear, 4 of them, moving in perfect formation, circling lower than the others, as if they're learning the steps of a dance that never ends. If you ever find yourself driving through the North Carolina mountains after dark and you see glowing orbs that don't belong in the sky, keep driving. Do not stop. Do not follow. And whatever you do, never step into a barren circle in the woods, because some lights in North Carolina aren't meant to be chased. They're meant to hunt. What do you think really walks on Brown Mountain? Drop your theories in the comments below, but only if you're brave enough. If you enjoyed this tale from the dark side of the Tar Heel State, smash that like button, subscribe to Eerie Narratives for more true horror, urban legends, and nightmare fuel from around the world, and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. Next time, we head to the Outer Banks for something even wetter and colder. Until then, sleep with one eye open. This has been Eerie Narratives. Stay eerie, friends. Subscribe to Eerie Narratives and never miss the darkness.
What if the fog outside your window wasn't just weather, but something alive, something that watches, something that waits?
And what if, the night you drove through Blackthorn Hollow for the first time, that fog didn't just swallow your headlights, it followed you home? This isn't a ghost story. This is what happened to me. And if you're listening right now, it might already know your name. Welcome to Eerie Narratives. If you're new here, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We don't just tell scary stories, we drag you into them. This one is 2 hours long for a reason. Grab your headphones, kill the lights, and whatever you do, do not pause this if the fog starts rolling in outside your window. Let's begin. My name is Elias Crow. I'm 34 years old, and until 18 months ago, I believed the world was just ordinary. Concrete, deadlines, coffee that tasted like regret. I was a freelance photographer, chasing abandoned places for stock footage. That's how I ended up in Blackthorn Hollow. The job was simple: shoot promotional stills for a quaint mountain village that wanted to rebrand itself as a tourist spot. The pay was ridiculous. The drive was 6 hours through nothing but pine trees and mist. By the time my GPS died, the fog had already swallowed the road. I remember the exact moment it started. Mile marker 47. My headlights cut through the white like a knife through milk. Then, a shape. Tall, thin, standing dead center in the road. No reflective vest, no movement, just watching. I slammed the brakes, the tires fishtailed. When the tires finally stopped screaming, the figure was gone. Only fog. I laughed it off as exhaustion, told myself it was a deer, but deer don't stand on two legs and stare straight into your soul. Blackthorn Hollow looked like a painting left out in the rain. Crooked Victorian houses, one flickering street lamp, and a single diner that smelled of burnt coffee and secrets. The realtor who met me at the rental cabin was an old woman named Agnes. Her eyes never quite focused on mine. "Stay inside after dark," she whispered while handing me the keys. "The fog gets hungry." I thought she was senile. I was wrong. The first night, I woke up at 3:13 a.m. to the sound of fingernails dragging across the bedroom window. Slow, deliberate, like someone testing how thick the glass was. I grabbed my flashlight, heart hammering, and shone it outside. Nothing but fog pressing against the pane, and two perfect handprints smeared from the outside on the glass. I told myself it was condensation. By day 3, the dreams started. In them, I stood in the middle of the road at mile marker 47. The fog parted just enough to reveal the figure again. Closer now. 7 feet tall, limbs too long, head tilted at an impossible angle. Its face was a mirror, not a mask, a mirror, and the reflection staring back at me wasn't mine. It was me, but older, broken, mouth sewn shut with black thread. I started researching the town during the day. The library was one room in the back of the post office. The librarian, Mr. Harlan, slid an old leather journal across the counter without me asking. Page 47, that's where it always begins. The journal belonged to a woman named Clara Whitmore, 1893. She wrote about the Silent Watcher, a thing that lived in the fog since the town was founded on an old burial ground no one was supposed to disturb. It didn't kill you outright. It studied you, learned your fears, then it wore them like a second skin until you begged it to take you. Clara's last entry. It knows my daughter's name now. Tonight, I will walk into the fog so it stops following her. She was never seen again. Her daughter vanished 2 weeks later. I laughed nervously and asked Mr. Harlan if it was just local folklore. He looked at me with eyes full of pity. "Son, folklore doesn't leave handprints on windows." That night, the power went out. The cabin went black. My phone had no signal. I heard footsteps inside the house, slow, wet, like boots filled with water. They stopped right outside my bedroom door. Then the whispering began, my own voice, but wrong, deeper, saying things I had never told anyone. My mother's suicide note, the night I almost stopped the car on the bridge, secrets the silent watcher had no right to know. I screamed. The door creaked open by itself. The hallway was full of fog, and in the middle of it, the figure, close enough to touch. Its mirror face showed me dying alone in this cabin, years from now, still whispering my own secrets back to myself. I ran. The next 2 weeks were a descent. I stopped sleeping. Friends I invited to stay, my old college roommate Marcus and his girlfriend Lena, both saw things too. Marcus woke up with bruises shaped like handprints on his throat. Lena found her childhood stuffed rabbit nailed to the wall, even though she had left it 300 miles away. We tried to leave. The road out of town was gone, just endless looping fog, and mile marker 47 appearing again and again no matter which direction we drove. On the final night, we made a stand at the old cemetery on the hill. The fog was so thick you couldn't see your own hands. The silent watcher stepped out of it, mirror face reflecting all three of us at once, screaming, bleeding, begging. I did the only thing I could think of. I read Clara's final journal entry out loud, then burned the book in front of it. The flames turned black. The figure shrieked, a sound like every secret I'd ever kept being torn out of my chest. It lunged and stopped inches from my face, because for the first time I looked straight into its mirror and didn't look away. I told it my real name, my real fears, not the ones it had stolen, the ones I had buried so deep even I had forgotten them. I gave it everything. The mirror cracked, the fog screamed, and then it was gone. The sun rose the next morning. The road out of town was clear. Marcus and Lena don't remember anything after we reached the cemetery. They think it was a bad trip from bad mushrooms. I let them believe it, but I know the truth. I still see the fog sometimes, in the corner of my bathroom mirror at 3:13 a.m., in the steam of my shower, in the rear-view mirror when I drive at night. And every time, the reflection is a little closer. It didn't leave, it just learned a better way to hide. That was the night the fog followed me home, and I'm still not sure it ever left. If this story crawled under your skin the way it still lives under mine, do me a favor right now. Smash that like button. It helps the algorithm know you want more true nightmares. Subscribe to Eerie Narratives and turn on notifications. We don't just tell scary stories, we drag you into them. This one is 2 hours long for a reason. Grab your headphones, kill the lights, and whatever you do, do not pause this if the fog starts rolling in outside your window. This has been Eerie Narratives. Sweet dreams, if you can still have them.